on the overview of the workflows was so helpful. I mean, everyone who signs up for your system, that should be required watching. I mean, that was fantastic. So thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's important too, just depending on where you guys are at. And that's why we say, email, Mark or myself, Kendra or Mark at Realvolve. And if you have things where you're like, this is something that I'm just not, getting. And we're in the system every single day. And so sometimes we need to stop and think about those higher level things, where it's not just how do you use this specific thing. Sometimes it's the overall thing. And so if there's things that you guys are needing, just reach out to us and we can help cover those.
Absolutely. And remember, whenever we're doing the office hours, while we typically have some kind of plan to go over something, especially at the end, we'll open it up and ask you guys to ask your questions. And if you've got some questions, write them down and identify those so that we can talk about them afterwards. And hopefully, if you're just kind of stuck on something mentally, how do I do this, XYZ, whatever it is, we want to be here to help you guys. So.
And I'll also say, Mark, when you stepped in, sometimes you'll step in when Kendra's explaining something and give some tiny little nuance. Like when you talked about hitting the grid and being able to check. I mean, that was like, wow, I had no idea. So I mean, so I love the banter between you as well.
Good. I tend to talk too technical, and having a Kendra in my group to take what I say and interpret it and bring it down to everyday language sometimes is the better way. But it also runs in reverse, because there's a lot that I know. Obviously, there's just a lot that as I've used this for so many years and developed it and designed it, and there's things that I just intrinsically know, oh, you need to do this. And it's not always in the minds of the person, oh, yeah, I should try to do that. But Kendra brings a new look at it at times. And I really enjoy having her in the group. So let's go ahead and get started. And this one is something Kendra has fully put together, and again, I just enjoy having the expertise in not only the software. She has a lot of experience with the software, but also in the background of being a real estate agent as well. So that is huge for a lot of people, and using it on a day-to-day basis is important. So turning your data into dollars is really what the ultimate goal is. And I think this is actually a two-part series, kind of divided up. So Kendra, why don't we just get going?
Yeah, for sure. And again, we're gonna go over a lot, and that's okay. I mean, these are recordings, but I put this together in a way where I really thought about, when Cheryl said that workflow piece was really helpful. This is the other part of it, in my opinion, right? How do you deal with your data? And nailing this is crucial, crucial. So if you have to watch this 6 times to do absolutely everything I say in this, then watch it 6 times. I really think it's that important. So really, we're going to take, in incremental pieces in setting this up for success, go over why you're doing it and how to do it. And so let's get started. Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. For those that don't know me, my name is Mark Stepp. I am the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve. Spending a lot of time just helping you guys understand the why. I've been doing real estate technology for 32 years now, and I love every bit of the time that I spend with you guys, and just hope that you guys can learn from what we do today.
And my name is Kendra Rouse. I come from a background, I've got degrees in psychology and business management. I've got going on a decade of real estate experience and brokerage operations. And I just kind of think in business processes. So I really enjoy kind of just now helping you guys get to the next level and empowering what you're doing every single day. So again, we're going to be talking about turning your data into dollars. And a little bit different this time, I put together a defining your database worksheet. And Mark, if you wouldn't mind, would you take that link and put it in chat? Because I want everyone to get a copy of it now.
Absolutely, we'll do.
As we go through today, I don't expect you to do this while we're on here, but the goal is definitely complete that worksheet and take the steps that we talk about today to complete everything that we're going to go through today. So let's take a look at that worksheet real quick.
I did put that into the chat area, so you guys can just click on that link and it should open it up.
Perfect. All right. So depending on where you're at in Realvolve or in your business processes, this may, you may have some of this done, you may not have any of it done. But the goal is to really, make sure that these things are defined in your business that, I see too often real estate agents think that doing is productive. And I don't think that. I think that doing without process and planning is often not as fruitful as it could be. So I really think stopping and planning and then making a determination on how you're going to work is so critical. So one of the things that, as you'll see in this database, it asks you to come in and first define your sources. So we're going to talk about defining those today and setting those up in Realvolve. We're going to talk about how you use stage, status, and category, how you define those and how you implement them in Realvolve. And then this worksheet basically is going to be having you do a little bit of homework to set this stuff up. And then hopefully after today, with the help of this recording, you can start using some of these techniques to start nurturing your database and setting your database up for success, though, that it works for you. Can you see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so as we go through today, take that worksheet in mind, start working on it, start thinking about how you can implement those principles into your business. But the goals of really what you should be doing, and again, we're talking about data and specifically your database, okay? Because I see all too often, I've seen agents with thousands and thousands of people in their database, and they're not doing anything with them. So if you have a database of, however many people, and you don't have process in place to nurture that database and turn that database into business or dollars, then that database essentially isn't doing you any good. And so we really need to, one, take that database and then do structured things with it so that it actually works for you in a way that is repetitive, is constant, is as streamlined as possible. So one, I would be asking yourself, are all of your contacts in Realvolve? And we're going to talk about what to do if they're not, and we're going to talk about what to do if they are. We want to put processes into place so that you're not guessing who to contact and when. Okay, so I know oftentimes, especially when I first started in real estate, I would just, what am I going to do today? And just see where the day took you. And oftentimes that was my email. And you really want to get away from that. And I think having a process in place to where you understand how you're going to work with your database on a daily basis is so important. You want an easy way to view how many contacts you have in each stage of the funnel. Can you easily sit there and say, I've got 6 people that I have active buyer brokerage agreements with, and this many people are, I've talked to them, I've vetted them, and they may turn into active business in the future. Can you easily look at your database and say that? We're going to go over how to do that today. And then I think it's so important, right? So again, if you're one of those people that lets noise control your day, and by what I mean by noise is, if something happens here, or you get a phone call, or you get an email, okay, you want to stay away from that. I think a really good way to do that is to set aside a certain time during the day. And typically I say that time should be the first time where you feel like you would be able to contact a person. That contact doesn't necessarily have to be a phone call. It could be an email, a social media post, whatever it is. If that's 10 o'clock in the morning for you, then at the beginning, set aside 15 minutes. Depending on how much database you have, that may turn into an hour. But at the beginning, I'd say 15 to 30 minutes and say Monday through Friday, I'm going to block this out on my calendar and I'm going to work my database. And you're going to use the things that we do today to work that database. And you want to remember that real estate is a relationship business. That's what it is. Okay. It's not saying, hey, do you want to buy a house? Hey, do you want to buy a house? Hey, do you want to buy a house? Because that's exhausting. Okay. When you stop and you realize that where the power comes in is, your second cousin may be buying a house in 3 years, but you're not going to pick up the phone every day and say, hey, are you going to buy a house? What you want to do is maintain that relationship with that person so that if and when they decide to do real estate, you're at the top of their, you're the phone call for that.
Or if they know somebody that does.
Exactly. And it all goes back to just maintaining that relationship. So if you're not using your contact cross-section, you should be. I love the contact cross-section. I think the contact cross-section, and part of the reason I said that this is going to be a 2-part series is because, there's several things that you do here. Okay. I think contact cross-section probably should be step 1 of those. And sometimes in addition to the contact cross-section, you may need to launch workflows on people, specifically contact workflows. But I really think it's important that you understand how the contact cross-section works and, what it can do for you in your business, and start using that to the best of your ability to start managing your database. The contact cross-section is on your dashboard when you log into Realvolve. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is when you look at this contact cross-section widget, you see this filter on and you see this filter off. Okay. And the way this works is it basically, if you categorize your contacts by stage and status, okay, so if they're defined as aware, know, like, and trust, and also suspect, prospect, lead, client, and past client, if those 2 things are defined in addition to the things that we talked through today, this contact will show up in one of these boxes based on how you've categorized them. Over here on the left, suspect, prospect, lead, client, and past client have a time frame associated with them. By default, suspect is every 2 days, prospects every 3 days, a lead and clients once a week, and a past clients every 120 days. So that's essentially, and you get to pick these, okay? So maybe to you contact a suspect every day, or, whatever. We'll go over how you determine those and how you set those, but just know that there's a time frame associated with everything on the left. So let's take client for an example. If I have a client that I have marked as client and trust, they will show up here over here where it says 15. What qualifies them to show up here for me to contact is the fact that it has been over the amount of days that I told the system that I would contact them. In this case, I told the system I would contact a client once a week. So on day 8, that contact is going to show up here. This 15 would turn to a 16 and tell me, hey, it's time for you to contact another person. So with filter on is saying these are all the people where it has been over the allotted amount of days for you to contact them. Okay, this is my to-do list. These are all the people that I need to focus on in my 15 minutes, in my hour, whatever it is that I've decided that I'm going to work on my database. This is what I focus on. Filter off says, this is the total number of people that I've put in the database and I have defined as this stage and status, but it's not time for me to contact them yet. So again, if I have 18, so with the filter off, I have 18 people under client and trust, okay? But I have 15 client trusts that I need to contact now. So that means 15 of those 18 people, it has been over that week that I said I would contact those people. And so that's what's telling me that it's time to give them a call, a text, a touch, an email, whatever it is that you decide to do. Anything on that, Mark? Oh, I think we lost Mark, guys. He's having internet out today. And so we will keep on. So what I've done is I've put together a video on basically kind of what it looks like to use that contact cross section, on your day-to-day. So again, 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it is, this is what I'm coming in and this is how I'm using this contact cross section once I've got it set up. After we go through this, we're going to talk about how we get this set up so that these people start showing up on the contact cross section and you can start using this every day. Every day when I log in, contact cross section. And so my contact cross section here shows me anything that is not 0 tells me that these are the number of people that I have placed in this bucket, essentially, that it is over the amount of time that I have allotted that I would contact this person. And so in this case, I have said I'm going to contact all of my past clients once every 90 days. So I can see here that I've placed 3 past clients that I've also assigned a stage as like, that it's been over the 90 days that I said I was going to contact them. And so what I want to do is essentially get this 3 down to 0. And I can do that by contacting these people. And so if I click on this box, I can see the 3 people here that I need to contact. It tells me how many days it's been since I've contacted them. And this was 403 days since a personal visit. The system has assigned this person a relationship score of 35. And so the system's also going to categorize these 3 people that I need to contact, putting the person that I talked to the longest, that it's been the longest time since I talked to at the top. So you can see here 294 days, it's prioritizing the person I haven't contacted in 403 days over that. And so in this case, I'm going to try and get a hold of Desiree. When I click here, I have a few things that I can do. If I click this first one, I have a note. Okay, so I'm going to say I spoke to her. All is well. May sell in 2025. Okay, so I'm just making notes on the conversation that I had. And then I'm going to update inside of this calendar view that I talked to Desiree today. And so when I do that, I'm going to click last call date. I have several things that I can update. Last call date, last email date, last personal visit date, personal note date, last SMS, and postpone contact date. There's 3 dates on here that will essentially reset this widget and get that number down from 3 to 2, or essentially say that Desiree's is good to go for the next 90 days. Or if I do postpone contact date until the date that I specify. So in this case, I called her, okay? The other thing that will update it is last personal visit date. So if I update last call date or last personal visit date, the system or the widget will reset itself and say Desiree is good for another 90 days from the date that I update. So in this case, I'm going to select here and select that I talked to Desiree today. When I back out of this widget, you can see that Desiree's gone. Okay, this box has went from 3 to 2, and the system has essentially taken Desiree off of this need to contact list, and she will come back in the next designated time. In this case, I've said that past clients come back in 90 days. And so I'm going to do that with each person. I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a note. If I contacted them, left a voicemail, I have access to their phone number. I can email them using any of my templates. Same thing with text message. I can select or access any of my templates. And again, I'm going to come over and assume that I talked to this person, if I did, and back out, and the system will reset itself. Let's say that I try to contact Sydney and I couldn't get a hold of her, and I'm going to try again maybe tomorrow. I'm going to just update that I left a voicemail. And because I did not update the last call date or the last personal visit date, Sydney is still here on essentially my to-do list. Okay, so past clients I've defined as once every 90 days. Suspects are probably people that have came in and I have not maybe made initial contact. Now, if I come in and I'm trying to make initial contact with someone, and I come in and I tried to call this person, but I didn't get a hold of them, I'm going to think about a couple things, okay? I'm going to think about the timeline that I associated, and again, the timelines are associated with this left column. By default, a suspect is every 2 days, okay? So if I come in and I mark that I called today, when I back out of here, this contact is going to go away and come back in 2 days. And so that's why the, I don't know what the last call date was before, but this postponed contact could be beneficial. So maybe I called, I didn't get a hold of this person, and instead of waiting for the system defaulted 2 days, I want to actually contact in tomorrow. And so I can come into this and I can scroll down here at the bottom and say postpone contact date. So even the system says, it's time for you to contact them. I'm actually going to say, okay, I'm going to define the date that I'm going to push this person out to. And I'm going to let that be tomorrow. So when I back out of here, it's now down to 7. That person will come back tomorrow. That postponed contact date can also be helpful for prospects or past clients. Let's say you talk to a past client and you know that calling them in 90 days might not be beneficial this time because maybe they're going on a trip over the summer and they won't be here. And so for some reason that you don't want to contact this person until September. And so I can come in and use my postponed contact date to say, September 6th would be a good time to contact them and not let this person sit here on my to-do list, essentially. Same thing with prospect, right? So by default, a prospect is probably a person that you've talked to. You're still kind of nurturing them. Maybe they're just not ready yet. And so maybe I have this prospect that has told me they're going to do something in 3 months. Well, I have defined that prospects on my list get contacted every 3 days. It's not appropriate for me to contact Marcy every 3 days if she's not going to be ready to buy for 3 months. I would probably put her on my long-term buyer campaign also, but in terms of her being on my widget or having her as a to-do on my contact cross section, I want to push her out. And so I'm going to use that postpone contact date and I'm going to push it out until, let's say, a month or 2 months or whatever it is that I decide is the best situation or the best next contact date for this specific person. So I'm essentially going to come through each type of person and my clients, probably talking to them once a week. They're probably under contract. And so I can come in and say, I just saw this person today. And that will update them and make sure Kathy comes back in a week, if that's what I've defined my clients to be. So again, last call date, last personal visit date, and postpone contact date will trigger a reset for each client and essentially allow you to get any of these that do not say 0 down to 0. Okay, so I've talked several times about the contact cross section and the importance of using the contact cross section. But I think what this webinar is really focused on is, one, should we be using the contact cross section? Yes, you should. But how do you start using it? Okay. And you're probably in one of two places. You either need to get your data into Realvolve, and even if you're a brand new agent, you have data. Okay. If you've done any transactions, anybody that you've ever closed in the past, your past clients, should be in the system. Anybody that that owns a property, is in your sphere of influence, that you think could buy or sell in the future, should be in your database. So start there. So we're gonna look at two things. One, if your data is already in Realvolve, we need to check it, because as you saw, that widget is comprised of stage, status, category can affect it. There's certain things that you need to do to even get your people on there. So how do we do that in an easy way or a streamlined way, and also kind of just check our data for accuracy? And if you don't have your data in here, I want you to take a copy of this import sheet. And I'm going to put this in chat. If you don't have it, this is where you should. The benefit of using this is it shows you here in column 2 all of the things that Realvolve can import. So if it is a column here, not necessarily required, but definitely here. So as what we're talking about today, stage, status, category. Okay, these are the things that we're going to be talking through today. So this is if your data is not in Realvolve, we want to take a copy of it and start building your database. Okay. The next thing that we're going to talk about is, well, what if your data is in Realvolve? And in that case, what we're going to do is we're going to talk through how you can go and pull a list of all of your contacts and check them for accuracy to see if you've defined your stage status. So remember the contact cross section, in order for people to show up on that widget, they need to have stage, status, and at least one last call or personal visit date. So again, look in chat, take a copy of that if you need to build your initial database. And this video is going to show you what to do if you already have your data in the system, but you need to check it and update it so we can start using that contact cross section.
I'm going to export certain aspects of my database so that I can get an overall or a clear view of what I do or do not have. And so to do that, I'm going to click on this head icon, and then I'm going to see that I have 130 contacts, and I'm going to click here to view all of them. Since I want to export everyone, I'm going to go ahead and select all. And then I'm going to come over here and click on the export icon. I'm going to decide if I'm going to do all contacts individually or combine primary and secondary. And so do I want the connected relationships to come through together, or am I going to nurture those individuals separately? And so you'll make that decision and hit export. You're then going to decide what you're going to export. And in this case, by default, it has selected everything. If I export everything from all of my contacts, it would include notes, it would include a lot of things. And I don't want to do that because, again, I just want to look at kind of a subset of information. And so I'm going to decide what I want to export. And so I would like to export their name. And so it's important that I know who I'm exporting. And then I'm going to take out their home mobile. So I have the basics. So if I need to do an import update, meaning that I want to take the information that I manipulate outside of the system, get it back into the system, I want a clear way for the system to know whose information I need updated. So I'm also going to do home email. I'm going to do stage. I'm going to do status. I'm going to do last call date and last personal visit date. I'm going to do their category. And I also want to take a look at their source type. All right, so I'm exporting first name, last name, phone, email, stage, status, category, last call date, last personal visit date, and their source type. And we'll go over all of these. So once I've got the list of things that I want to take a look at, I'm going to hit export. When I do that, again, this banner tells me where I can find a copy of it. So it gave me a copy of it. I can have access to it here. I can also go into my settings under exports, and I can see that this was downloaded today, and I could also download it from here, and then it should email you a copy as well.
Okay. So again, the purpose of doing this is it's not necessarily super easy to say, you know, I have everybody that I want kind of starting off with a clean slate. So if you're just now starting to use your contact cross section, this is probably the first thing that I would do if I already had data in the system. And the reason for that is because you could go into, you know, however many contacts and individually check that criteria to see if they're going to show up on that contact cross section, or you can do this export. And you can kind of easily see here, okay, so this is from what I did in this export. It shows me their name, their mobile. I can easily see here that I'm missing some mobile phone numbers. I can see the stage and the status that I have defined. If either stage or status is set to none, then that is saying that that person does not qualify to be on my contact cross section. And I should update that to, you know, aware, know, like, or trust, or suspect, prospect, lead, client, or past client, if I want to start nurturing them through that widget. I can also see if I've ever input a last call date or a last personal visit date, their category, A, B, C, D, and then their source type. So where did this contact come from. And so what you can do, and we'll show you at the end of this what you do with this. So 2 things. Again, either take a copy of that initial database and start building it out. I believe if you need your contacts imported, I believe it's realvolve.com/imports. Is that right, Mark?
You can get, yes.
Okay. So if you need help with that import, you can go ahead and go to that and import your information and submit your CSV file that you've created and get help with that import if you need it. What I'm talking about here is if you're already taking your information and you're taking a subset to make sure that you get your stage status, things like that. And we'll show you at the end if you need to go this route and kind of update your data, how you get that information back into Realvolve. Welcome back, Mark.
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm running into some internet problems here and I've got a technician on their way, so I may get disconnected yet again.
No worries. All right, so if you take a look at that worksheet, one of the first things that it has you do is define where your lead sources are coming from. You may have, just a couple, you may have a few dozen, depending on kind of where you're at. But very important that we first define where your source is coming from, because I think that by doing that first, you can then say, well, if I've defined somebody as a sphere of influence, this is how I treat this lead, and alternatively, how they end up on my contact cross-section. So the next thing we're going to watch is how you're going to actually go in once you've completed your worksheet into your settings and update your sources.
To set my source types, I'm going to click on settings. I'm going to scroll down to where it says contact source types on the left. And then I can do 2 things. From this add master content source types, if I click in the box, I'm given a drop down of common source types. I can select from them and I can hit save. In the event that I have a custom type that just may not be in here, and let's just say I'm getting leads from a referral exchange, and it was not in my drop down, I can type in whatever my custom contact type is and hit save. When I do that, it will be added to my list at the bottom. If I need to delete them or clean them up, anything that I've selected from this drop down has an X next to it. I can click that and hit save. Anything that I've added as a custom type will have a pencil and an X next to it. And so maybe I spelled referral wrong. I can come in here and update that and hit save. Also, if I'm no longer working with this type, I can go ahead and hit X and it will delete that out.
Okay, so super important that you come in and you, one, like I said, fill out that worksheet, make a decision on what your current source types are, and then make sure that you've gone into your settings in Realvolve and updated that so that we can start using that information or that data.
And if you've imported from a CSV file, it will automatically add any of the items that you've got in a source field that you've imported. It'll automatically add those as custom items if they're not as part of the master list. But I've seen cases where people put in the wrong type of information into that import, and it's just a jumbled mess of things, and it would be really beneficial to get that thing cleaned up.
Yeah, and I think, and then that too, like I said, if you've already defined your database in the system, kind of doing that subset export and taking a look at what you have in the system is important, because the system does, you want to pay attention to your capitalization, you want to pay attention to misspellings, things like that, especially if you're kind of doing your initial import. So in addition to deciding or defining your sources, and that's important for tracking, and then also defining how you're going to deal with different types of contact sources in terms of how you handle that type of lead. We want to define our stage and status. So if remember, to get people on that contact cross section, we have to give them a stage and a status so that they know where to show up on that widget. On your worksheet, it will show you, it will give you a breakdown of what each one of those means, and kind of allow you to define how often you're going to contact each type of status. And so again, by default, suspect is 2 days, prospect is 3 days, lead and client are once a week, and past clients every 120 days. It shows that on your worksheet, and you can actually change that. And I would write that on your worksheet, and then I put together a short video that shows you, once you've made that determination, how often you're going to contact each type of status. Then we need to go into Realvolve in our settings and make sure that we have told Realvolve how we're going to handle each type.
How my contacts show up on my contact cross section is defined by my stage and my status. Okay, so this column and this column. So in order for me to define how often I'm contacting past clients, I need to set up, I need to go to my settings and make that determination for each. And so what I'm going to do is come in and click on settings. And I'm going to scroll down on the left and click on set default fields. Once I've done that, I'm going to select dashboard. And here I have suspect, prospect, lead, client, and past client. These are the same things that I just saw on my my contact cross section. And so here we have suspect, prospect, lead, client, and past client. And so as you can see in your settings, again, under set default field and dashboard, the system by default has assigned a frequency to each of these. And so suspect by default is going to be every 2 days, a prospect every 3 days, a lead and client once a week, and a past client once every 120 days. If those frequencies are different for you, then you're going to come in here and you're going to change them. Maybe you contact your suspects every day. And so once I update that, then I'm going to click update so it saves those changes. Now, suspect, prospect, lead, and client can be overridden by category A, B, C, and D. So let's use an example. Maybe I have a past client that I have marked as past client, but I've also given them a category of A to mark their importance. And so I don't treat my past client A's the same way I do as my past client B's. I want to contact them more frequently. And so if I've marked someone as past client, instead of being prompted to contact them every 120 days, if I've also given them a category of A, then they would be contacted every 60 days. So I'm going to make all my selections and hit update.
Okay,
How
so
my contacts show up on my,
sorry guys. All right, so again, kind of just a snapshot of where we're at. We really want to make sure that the data is in Realvolve. We want to make sure we've defined our source types, that we've set frequencies for our stage and our status. And what we talked about earlier is really doing that through import. But I think it's also important to kind of see where that information lives inside of a contact. And so inside of the contact tab, you'll see you have a drop down for classifications. Your stage is a drop down. You can select that. Your status is here. You also have a drop down for contact dates where you can put in your initial last call date and your last personal visit date. If you only have a handful of contacts in your database, it may be beneficial, or you may be okay for you to go in and update individual ones. But we also want you to know that through, imports, import updates, and then mass updating, that some of these things can be done in a higher volume, including stage and status. So let's take a look at what that looks like in Realvolve and where you can update that manually.
I want to ensure that I have a few things set for each of my contacts. And so inside my contact, I'm going to click under the contact tab, and I'm going to click the drop down for classifications. I want to ensure that from everything that we talked about today, I've set my stage, so aware, know, like, or trust, and my status, suspect, prospect, lead, client, and past client. I also want to come down and select at least a last call date or a last personal visit date. By doing that, I'm going to ensure that this person shows up on my contact cross section. And so since I have put this person as a client and I have set my clients to be contacted once every week, once every 7 days, and I put a last call date as today, then this person is going to show up on my contact cross section 7 days from this date or today.
I'm also going to decide if I'm going to set categories, and I can do that by selecting this here. And so if I've decided that this person's a D, I can select this and I've set my stage status, my category, and at least one last call date or last personal visit date. Yeah, so that's kind of how you're going to go in there and do that individually. And then the last part of your worksheet is going to, once you've defined your sources, I also think it's important that you kind of look at, you know, if I have somebody as a sphere, how am I going to treat them? You know, what is the stage and the status that I've predefined as them? If I receive somebody in as a referral, how am I going to handle that? And in this case, I have marked their stage as no and their status as lead. And that may be different for you, but all of that goes back to, if you're using the contact cross section, part of the importance of how you're going to set their status is the frequency that you've defined behind lead. And again, by default, that's once a week. So really the steps, I think, for success, and the takeaway from this is make sure you complete your defining your data worksheet. And again, if you have to rewatch this webinar to get those settings set up, you really want to make that incremental first step in setting up the settings that we've talked about today. You want to make sure that each contact that you've decided to nurture a relationship with has a stage, a status, at least one personal visit or last call date, and a category assigned if you decide to use categories. And then also, let's say that you've marked somebody as a past client and trust, and for whatever reason, you've decided not to nurture them any longer. It kind of works in the opposite. So if I mark a stage or a status back to none, then that disqualifies somebody from being on my contact cross section, and I won't get reminded from them. And then also checking your contact cross section once a day, Monday through Friday, and keeping it as close to zero as possible. I think the thought of making a bunch of phone calls for some agents is scary, but I would not look at this contact cross section as these are phone calls. These are, sometimes they're just thoughts, right? So if a person comes up on my contact cross section, I'm asking myself, where is this person? You know, what do they need from me? Is it a social media reach out? Is it a text message? Is it a a phone call? What can I do today to further nurture this relationship and not just say, do I need to pick up this phone call and say, hey, are you, ready to buy or sell? That absolutely may be the case on what you decide to do with that. But really, I would take this contact cross section as a way to maintain established relationships and convert leads into clients and use it for tracking purposes. And the last thing that I want to show you today is if you decide to do that subset export, what we talked about earlier, where you pull out the information that we've talked about so that you can see inside of your database as to what you do or don't currently have, you're going to update that CSV file. I did it in Google Sheets. You can do it in Excel. It doesn't really matter. Once you've updated it, you need to get that information back into Realvolve. And once you do that with a complete set of stage, status, call date, things like that, that widget will start populating automatically. And so the last video that I'm going to show you is what you do with your data to get it back into Realvolve so that your widget can start working for you.
Okay, so I've downloaded a subset of my database to kind of take a look at what I have as far as stage, status, last call date, last personal visit date, category, and source type. And so as I can see here, there's a lot of information that I can review. I can update a lot of things that I have none for. So again, if I don't have a stage, a status, and at least one last call or last personal visit date, this person does not qualify to show up on my contact cross section, which may be your intent, but you want to make sure that anybody that you have good data in so that we can start working our database as soon as possible. So I'm going to go through, review stage, status. I'm going to review all this information, update it. If I need to add a date, I'm going to match the date type or the formatting that the system exported. And so maybe I also talked to this person on March 15th. 2023, they're in category B. I'm going to update my information to the best of my ability. I'm going to come into file and I'm going.
And it didn't record this page, so I'm just going to pull up really quickly and just show you guys what I was looking at. a second. All right, so I'll share this with you guys. I just want to show you kind of how it exports your data, and that's what I didn't realize that it didn't show you that. So give me just a second. Okay, and so this opened up in whatever Apple's default is, but again, you can open it up in Google Sheets, you can open it up in Excel, you can open it up in whatever you want to do. The importance is if you follow the steps in that video, it will export something like this. Okay, I can quickly see that I don't have a ton of source types. I don't have a lot of last call and last personal visit dates, but I can actually just come in here in whatever tech or editor that I decide to use, and I can update that information. Once you are finished updating stage, status, last call date, things like that, then what you want to do is you want to download a copy of that in a CSV file. And then I'm going to show you in this video exactly what you do with that or how you get it back into Realvolve. So again, I apologize about that, but that's the part that it wasn't playing.
Okay, so I've downloaded a subset of my database to kind of take a look at what I have as far as stage status, last call date, last personal. And so if I want to import content, I want to do because I'm going to come over to Realvolve and I'm going to click up here and click on my settings. I'm then going to click on import contacts and I'm going to select choose file. Once I've done that, I'm going to select my CSV file and I'm going to click upload. Now, what I want to do, because I'm essentially updating my contacts, I do not want to re-import them because I will create duplicates and I do not want to do that. And so what I want to do is right here, it says, how do you want to import contacts? Instead of all contacts, I'm going to select one of these. So skip duplicates or update contacts via email key or name key. So I'm basically telling the system, when you update this person's contact information or the information that I've updated in the CSV file, do I want you to look at their name or their email address in determining which person gets updated? And so in this case, I'm just going to select name. I want you to take a look at the name and update that. And so what I've done here is I'm going to come in and I'm going to select or essentially match my data in terms of what fields this information is stored into Realvolve. And so right now I want primary contact and I would come down and select first name. Primary contact, last name, primary contact, home mobile, primary contact, home email, because again, these are the things that I exported. So I want to make sure that they're putting that information back into where I exported it from or updating it. Primary contact stage, primary contact status, primary contact last call date, primary contact last personal visit date, primary contact category, and primary contact source type. All right, so once I've done that, I've essentially said, take the information that I updated and store it into these fields in Realvolve. Do not create new contacts, but update duplicates using the name key. So look for people that have the same name and update all of their information. Once I do that and I hit import, the system will go in and take the information that you updated and update it for you.
Okay. So
Hey, Kendra,
Yeah.
one thing that I want to make sure we cover is whenever you're doing an import like that, number one, if if that all seemed a little overwhelming, you could use your spreadsheet as your CSV file as kind of uh, a guide and just manually do it within the database. But one thing to remember is if you use the update import by name like that, make sure that you don't have two John Smiths or two Jose Lopez's, those types of names that are really common, because it can cause a challenge whenever it's doing the import.
Yep, exactly. And there is that update by email as well. And so the consideration of the caution there would be is if you are using the same email address for multiple people. So you could kind of do an import update, by either one. And the reason that I show that import update option, is for those people that have been in the database, for a while. You have an established database, but you're just not using it maybe to its full potential. So I do think that exporting that subset and kind of looking at that is the more advanced option of that. But I definitely think it's something that, a few people on this call and my Navigator clients that, that is helpful. If you are just getting started, you can absolutely take the steps where you're updating individual contact information. But the takeaway really is, do you have all of your data in the system? I think you should complete that worksheet and really use that to think about the data you already have in the system in terms of updating it so that those people show up on the contact cross section, and that going forward that you make the commitment to define each contact in terms of their stage status, at least one call or personal visit date, so that you can come in once a day and just work that widget or that contact cross section and nurture those relationships. So a lot of what we talked about today is kind of the initial setup. And so there's some work behind that. But once you've done that and you've qualified a contact for the contact cross section, that person shows up on your contact cross section, and there's not a way for them to essentially just fall off and be forgotten about unless you change their stage or status to none. And so, taking the time to take the contacts that you have, and if you're really like, well, where do I start? You start with your past clients, you start with your sphere of influence, and then you go on to any other source of business that you have. And so, again, that was a lot. It may have been a lot, but hopefully each step of this is recording, and we'll put this on Facebook. And so if you need to take these steps to kind of define your contact cross section and the first step of getting your data in the system, and ideally on the contact cross section, this video should give you the step-by-step on how to do that. Next time, we're going to go into workflows and other more, ways that you can kind of nurture your database and how you take those subsets of information or how you define each category and different ways that you can manage contacts or nurture leads by type and source. But the very first step is to get good data in. And so those are the things that I would say, if you're going to focus on anything, make sure that you have a clean database with that information. And so whether you're inputting it for the first time, whether you're updating the information you already have in it, hopefully this video is kind of a step-by-step way for you to do that, so that when we meet again next month and talk about this again, you've taken those steps and we can kind of further talk about how you want to work with your data, because the goal is not to just talk about theoretics, right? I really think the importance is getting that data up to date so that we can further work with it. And this is one of the first steps in doing that. If you have questions or, want more information on what we talked about today, my email is kendra@Realvolve. We do have a Navigator program where we work with you one-on-one and, customize your workflows, implement them. We have a weekly 3-month program, a bi-weekly 6-month program. We also have a go at your own pace with 20 self-paced courses. So again, if you'd like more information on that, just reach out. And then a few things we're going to be talking about in weeks to come. And again, we meet every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We're talking about harnessing Realvolve superpowers, empowering the solo agent, automation in your business. We'll have another Q&A session, and then we'll again talk about turning your data into dollars part 2. If you need help in between these office hours, when you're logged into Realvolve, pay attention, to the how do I at the bottom. If you see something in your system that's not quite working right, go ahead and click on some more, submit a support ticket. And you have a help button down here with a search feature that you can kind of search previous articles. And you also have a contact us with chat during those hours. And so today, hopefully you took a copy of that worksheet, and I again encourage you to do that. And we're also going to give away our new lead starter workflow for being on today's webinar. So if you want that, go ahead and put your Realvolve email in the chat. And essentially what that workflow does, and we'll talk about this more next time, is how you handle lead sources where you need to make an initial contact. So getting an initial text to yourself that says, hey, you have a new lead. And let's get an automated text and an email over to that new lead so that they know that you've received their information and that you'll be reaching out to them shortly.
Wow. Kendra, you have just been a wealth of information, getting lots of praises in the messaging area as well. There are a couple questions. Let me pull that up. Real quick. If my contact is a address and phone, will it at, so how the question is,
Mark, you're breaking up a little bit. Okay, so Cheryl asked if my contact is a work and phone, will that be picked up in my SOI? So what I showed in there was exporting home work and home mobile. I'm sorry, home email and home mobile. When you go to do that export, you could just as easily add work email and work mobile in there, but yes, it will. So if you are, nurturing vendors or something like that, you can definitely implement work phone and their address into their contact. I just showed an instance where you're just using home.
The main thing that I'm curious about is I don't remember which of it's status or stage, but there's only past client, lead, suspect, or prospect. There's nothing for a work person that I want to stay in contact with. So what would I put there?
Good question. I would repurpose past client. Okay. So think about past client more in terms of people that I have an established relationship with, and more on the people that you're going to kind of have that more distant, if you define that past client as 90 days or 120 days or whatever else, more than likely those vendors, those circle of influence, those kind of people could also live in that bucket. And that's where you could also use the aware, know, like, and trust to kind of differentiate if you chose to. So I know it's a little bit of repurposing, but I would definitely use that past client bucket.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. If I have a husband and a wife and I only talk to one of them, what is the best practice for stage and status? Cheryl, you're coming with all the good questions today. I get this question a lot, and my personal preference is I am going to disqualify one of them, and it's going to be the person that I typically don't contact. And where I say that you make this determination is, what were you going to do in the real world? If you have Bob and Susie, but oh, I need to think about Bob and Susie, what are you going to do? Are you going to pick up the phone call and call Bob and text Susie, and you're actually going to maintain contact with both of them? Because if you are, keep both of them on your contact cross-section. But if you know when you're thinking about nurturing that relationship with Bob and Susie, that Bob is your primary contact, then disqualify Susie by changing one of her stage or status to none, and then just nurture that relationship through Bob's contact. Okay, and then I've got your guys' emails. Any other questions? I know that was a lot, you guys, and I don't shy away from the information. If you have to take this video and pause it until you get that piece down, then absolutely do it. So I think that the importance of having that much information and taking away action steps out of this is huge.
you just hit rock star status, looks like. Good job.
Awesome, guys. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys next week if you don't have any other questions.